Paul Mack here. Just wanted to show you a few things I got at the auction. Hey, kind of hit a cast iron jackpot this time. There was a lot of good cast iron name brand stuff at this auction. Wagner and Griswold. Here is a Wagner Sydney 1386. I can't see. This looks like a pretty old one. It's got a more of a dished out pan. You don't really see those very often. Looks like a, I don't know, number 6, number 7, number 8, I don't know. Somewhere in there, about a 7-8 inch little skillet. But it is a Wagner, which Wagner ware. That's if you're going to need a cast iron skillet, which, by the way, when you're cooking eggs on a cast iron skillet, in order to keep it from sticking, you want your skillet cured out. So put some oil in it, put it in the oven on a low temperature, 200 degrees, and just let it kind of cook on there, and you'll end up getting it nice and seasoned. But then once you got it seasoned, you'll be able to cook stuff in it and not have it stick. So once it's seasoned, fry some bacon up in here, some sausage, and then get it good and hot, and then you can stir some eggs up, pour them in. And usually when the skillet's hot, that's when things won't stick. So you want it hot before you use it. Don't just put your eggs in when it's cold and let them all warm up together. It needs to be fairly hot before you put them eggs in so it won't stick. So that's your tip for the day. And I've got this is kind of neat. This is a square little cast iron pan here. And this one is Wagner ware, Sydney. And it's got little raised parts in here to, I don't know, I guess to keep your bacon grease from getting on your egg or whatever. Anyway, got a little square one. And then have a larger, I think this is, yeah, this one's Wagner ware too. And I don't know how wide this is a pretty big one here. This is a nice one. This is for your big family here, but this is a good old skillet. Oh, number 10, that's what it is. And I've got one here that does not have a name on the back. It's a number 5, 8.5 inch skillet. Now sometimes these skillets you find that don't have a name on them, they might still be a Griswold or a Wagner. The thing was, back in the early part of the 1900s, Wagner and Griswold would make skillets to be sold by Sears Roebuck in their catalog or Montgomery Ward catalog. And so those skillets would not have the Wagner or the Griswold name on them, but they might still be made by those companies. And you can still figure out who made the skillet by the distinguishing marks on it, because the handles are different, the neck here might be different, the bottom is different. Sometimes they have rings on them, sometimes there's slots cut in the rings that you can tell who the maker was. So oh, and by the way, when you're going to buy a skillet, you want to set it on a flat surface and make sure it doesn't wobble or anything, because that means it might have gotten overheated and warped. Somebody got it too hot. Certainly don't want to buy a cracked one unless you just want to wait, for your garden gate or something, or to, a weapon for your husband, or the weapon to hit your husband with when he's out of line. So identifying these old skillets could become a hobby of yours. Maybe you'd like to get into figuring out what cast iron is what cast iron. A lot of people do it. They'll buy these and clean them up, get the rust off of them, and cure them. Get them all cured out, blackened, and ready to cook eggs on. So, cast iron. Here's an old cornbread pan. I can tell it's a cornbread pan because it's in the shape of a corn cob. This has 7 slots on it. It doesn't have a name on it. 27C. Of course, again, it could have been made by one of the name brand makers and sold by Sears Roebuck or Montgomery Ward. I actually bought 2 of these, and then I was pretty proud of this. This actually, even though it does not say it, is a Griswold muffin pan. Cast iron Griswold muffin pan. Does not say Griswold anywhere on it, but if you look these up, the image of a Griswold cornbread pan, you will find this with 11 places for cornbread muffins, or regular muffins, whatever you want to cook in there. So Griswold muffin pan. Pretty proud of that purchase. And I've got another sausage grinder. It looks like this one has all the parts. I really try not to buy them unless they've got all the parts, because a lot of times these the faces are missing, or the grinding plates are missing, or whatever, or the handle's broke. This one is a universal LF&C, New Britain, Connecticut, made universal number. Looks like number 3, sausage grinder. Everybody ought to have one of these as a backup. You know, you never know. A lot of times back in the day, people would buy chuck roast or whatever from the grocery store and grind it themselves, make their own hamburger at home. I don't even know if I don't know when they started actually grinding hamburger and selling it ground, but back in the day, you would need one of these to chop up your own hamburger. So, universal sausage grinder, or, you know, ground beef grinder if you want to use it that way. Hey, I wanted to mention that today's video is sponsored by me, and I've got some things you might be interested in. You know, a lot of the things I show on the auction show here that I buy at the auctions are really still useful and practical for the small farm or homestead. Well, another thing that's practical for the small farm or homestead are a couple of books I've written. One of them, How to Build an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn. Maybe you have a structure that you need on your farm, but you're not quite sure how to build it, and you don't quite have enough money to buy all the materials to hire somebody to do it. Well, guess what? You could do it yourself, even if you're not a carpenter. My book is geared for people who are not necessarily carpenters, people like I was starting out. I just want a building, and I want it as simple and inexpensively as possible. So in my book, Building an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn, I show how one person can build a structure that can come in very useful on your small farm. And not only that, it has rustic appeal. Building an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn. Go to my website, Farm Hands Companion. Go down to the general store section. You can see all the different books I have available, but look for Building an Old-Fashioned Pole Barn. And it looks like I've got a little bitty solar fence charger. This is a Patriot Solar Energizer PS5. Powers up to 8 acres or 2 miles. 1 year warranty, which I'm sure has expired by 9 or 10 years. And look, they've still got the ground rod, which looks like all they used was a small piece of rebar here, which, you know, it works. Of course, this is solar powered. I use all mine that I use around here for the hogs and the cows are electric. They can be put on a battery. They've got a little adapter for a battery. But I use electric. It seems to be more dependable. You got a constant, you know, if it's working, you got a constant voltage coming out of it. And it keeps all my livestock in. That's basically all I use around here at this point anyway. These are useful, for instance, if you had a little chicken yard or a chicken house or something, and you've got coons that are breaking in some way, usually at ground level or whatever, getting under the chicken yard fence and then going in the chicken house if you didn't close it up at night. You can put this out there facing, of course, I guess south, and put a grounding rod in, drive it in close by, and then run a hot wire along some insulators. You can even cut PVC at an angle and drive it in the ground and either saw slots in it or drill holes in it and use it as an insulator to go from post to post, just, you know, at nose level on a coon or possum or skunk or whatever, just enough to get its attention. And when it, you know, it touches its cold nose against that a few times, it'll learn that it does not like anything that looks like a wire. Or you can run it around, you know, a temporary garden if you're trying to keep rabbits out. So these are handy for little situations that you need to solve, usually involving predators or stray dogs or whatever. You know, maybe you want to keep your dog out of your wife's flower bed. Just put this up temporarily, and that'll teach him he doesn't want to go there. So, little solar fence charger. Hey, got a couple of teapots or kettles. This one, of course, is cast iron. I've shown you a couple of these I've bought at auctions before. And the bottom has the typical gate mark on it, which means generally it was made in the 1800s. That was the old casting process. But this one I thought was neat. I don't see a lot of these. This one appears to be stainless steel, and this thought it's kind of neat. Somebody's used it over an open flame, it looks like, but I believe it says Revere, so Revereware stainless steel teapot. You're never ever going to believe what I bought here. Looky here. Do you know what this is? Now it's got a handle on it here. The handle is dry rotted and broke. Well, it's got a bell in it too. Very beautiful piece of history. It's probably got a, what do you call it, a magneto in here. Anyway, you crank the handle here and it builds up a charge between these two poles here, and you would have a couple of wires attached, one attached to each one of these. Farmers, you know, a lot of times dynamite was something that you could just run down to the hardware store and pick you up a case of dynamite, and farmers would blow stumps with dynamite. You know, they're clearing a field, you got the stump left, you dig down, and rather than having to dig the whole stump up, you just dig down a little bit on one side, put you some dynamite sticks in, stick a couple of wires in one of them, and then run the two wires back to here, screw them down to those two poles right there. And I suppose, you know, a lot of times, you know, in cartoons you see the old plunger. So evidently what you would do is, as soon as you, if you cranked it and had a charge going, as soon as you touched one wire to this one, or had one wire here attached already, touched this one, it would go off. Or else you would just connect both wires and then crank, and once it built up enough charge, it would blow off your stump. Yeah, it's dangerous stuff back then, but you know, farming takes risks. You know, you take risk and you get the job done, and this certainly would. Boy, I bet it'd be good for blowing up beaver dams too. Now, there is one thing that this probably might have been used for as well. Everybody knew it, and a lot of people did it back then. Back then it wasn't illegal like it is now, but a lot of people would use these for fishing. You can also take the insides out of one of the old crank phones and hook the two wires to it, run the two wires into a pond or a river or whatever, and you crank the magneto or whatever and build up a charge, and then you shocked all the fish in the pond and they would slowly rise to the top. It was very easy, I guess back then was practical, way to catch a lot of fish real quick. Of course, you're stunning everything in there for a distance around. Of course, that's illegal. You know, we don't want to do that anymore because that is totally not legal anymore. So do not use these for fishing. Of course, you can't really buy dynamite either unless you got a permit. So I don't know what good it would be for, other than just, you know, a conversation piece. Or, you know, maybe you don't want to shock fish. It would be fun to, you know, carry one down, and if you ever catch your neighbor's skinny dipping, put a couple of wires in the creek and see what happens. That would be interesting, I guess. And get them out of there in a hurry, wouldn't it? And look what beautiful finish. This is made out of oak, and I don't know if you can see this. Has beautiful, here, I'll show you. It has beautiful dovetail work on it right here. Oak finish. Just almost like one of those old crank phones. Beautiful piece of work. Don't go fishing with it. Illegal. Wonder if this still charges. I got a couple wires. Let's try it out. Woohoo! It works. Oh, it works.